Who really owned the shadows? Americans will tell you that Hollywood invented film noir. They are wrong. While America took all the credit, British filmmakers were making crime pictures that were darker, meaner, and far more honest. Some were banned, some were buried. Almost none of them crossed the ocean. These 18 thrillers out-Hollywooded Hollywood, and most Americans have never seen a single frame of any of them. Number 18. Cash on Demand, 1961. What would you do if a stranger walked into your bank and told you he was holding your wife and child? That is the trap at the heart of this tight little thriller, and it stars a man you would never expect. Peter Cushing, the great horror star, plays a cold and cruel bank manager named Harry Fordyce. He runs his small branch like a tyrant. It is 2 days before Christmas, and while his staff want to enjoy the season, Fordyce inspects them like a Scrooge and treats them all like dirt. Then a smooth, charming man who calls himself Colonel Gore Hepburn walks in, pretending to be an insurance inspector. Once the door of the office closes, the mask drops. Hepburn, played by the wonderful Andre Morel, tells Fordyce the truth. He is a thief, and he says his men are holding the manager's family. If Fordyce does not help him empty the vault, his loved ones will not live to see Christmas. So the proud, hated manager is forced to rob his own bank, sweating and shaking, hiding every move from his own workers. Here is the cruel trick at the center of it all. The threat against his family turns out to be a clever bluff, a lie designed to break a proud man down. The best moment comes near the end, when the staff quietly work out that something is wrong and call for help. The man who bullied them for years must now beg the very people he mistreated to save his life. It is a lesson wrapped inside a robbery. Because it was made by Hammer, the studio famous for monsters, nobody expected a smart crime story, so it played for a few weeks in America and then simply disappeared. Yet many now call it one of the finest small crime films the British ever made. Number 17. Payroll, 1961. Every great heist movie asks one question: what happens after the money is stolen? This film gives one of the coldest answers ever put on screen. A vicious gang, led by a handsome and heartless crook named Johnny Mellors, plans to grab the wages of a large factory in the north of England. To do it, they lean on a weak office worker named Dennis Pearson, a man pushed into crime by his greedy wife Katie, who wants a richer life than he can give her. The gang lays out the perfect plan, and then everything falls apart. At the last moment, the factory switches to a tough armored van. The men still go ahead, and the raid turns brutal. The driver of the van loses his life, and the robbers speed away with £50,000 and blood on their hands. But this is where the story really begins. The dead driver leaves behind a widow named Jackie Parker, and she refuses to let it go. While the police search for clues, she starts her own quiet hunt for revenge, sending threatening letters to the men she suspects. At the same time, greedy Katie turns on her own husband and sets her eyes on Johnny, and the gang begins to eat itself alive from the inside. The whole thing races toward a tense final chase around the docks, where the widow finally corners the man who took everything from her. It was filmed on the real streets of Newcastle, giving it a grimy, true feeling years before the famous film Get Carter used the same northern city. The story is packed with greed, lust, and cold betrayal, and it was daring for its time, pushing hard against the strict rules of what British films were allowed to show. Americans never found it because it had no big stars they knew, and it quietly slipped out under a different title, I Promise to Pay, and then was forgotten. Number 16. Hell is a City, 1960. Forget the foggy streets of London for a moment. This film drags you into the grim, industrial north, and it is one of the toughest crime pictures Britain ever made. Stanley Baker plays Inspector Harry Martineau, a hard-boiled detective in the smoky city of Manchester. He is a man with troubles at home and troubles on the street. His wife is cold and angry and refuses to give him children, so he throws himself into his work. And his work has just gotten worse. A dangerous criminal named Don Starling has smashed his way out of prison, and Martineau, who put him there years ago, knows the man will come home to grab a hidden fortune in stolen jewels. Starling does exactly that, gathering his old gang to rob a bookmaker for the cash he needs to run. But the robbery goes wrong. During the raid, a young woman is killed, and her body is dumped on the lonely moors outside the city. Now it is a hunt to the death. Martineau chases his old enemy through seedy pubs, betting shops, and one strange, unforgettable scene where men gamble by tossing coins in the air on a bare stretch of moorland. The whole picture feels raw and real because it was filmed on the true streets and rooftops of Manchester, not in a safe studio. It all builds to a heart-pounding chase across the rooftops of the city, high above the crowds. What makes it special is the detective himself. Martineau is tired, human, and flawed, and he became the model for nearly every gritty British cop who came after him. This one is a Hammer film too, but with no monsters at all, and that surprise, plus its northern setting, meant American fans of British crime never gave it a chance. Number 15, Nowhere to Go, 1958. Here is a film famous for one reason that most people miss. It gave us the very first screen role of Maggie Smith, decades before she became a beloved star. But there is so much more to it than that. The story follows a cool, ruthless con man named Paul Gregory, who has come from across the sea to pull off a clever swindle in London. He tricks a rich old widow out of her valuable coin collection and turns it into £55,000 in cash. He hides the money in a bank safe and lets himself be arrested, sure he will get a short and easy prison term. Instead, the judge throws the book at him, and he is sentenced to 10 long years. So he breaks out. But the moment he is free, everything turns against him. His partner betrays him and steals the key to the money. In a struggle, Gregory accidentally causes the man's death, and now he is not just an escaped thief, but a hunted killer. One by one, every criminal he knows shuts the door in his face. With the police closing in and no friends left, he finds his only help in a lonely young woman named Bridget, played by Maggie Smith, who takes pity on him and shelters him. This was one of the very last films from the famous Ealing Studios, and the director said he wanted to make the least Ealing film ever, a cold and hopeless story where no one can be trusted. It is bleak and beautiful, and it ends the only way it can, with no easy comfort for anyone. Along the way, it drips with cool style, sharp shadows, and a jazzy score, feeling more like a crime film from France than anything else being made in Britain at the time. Americans never saw it because it played as the second half of a double bill and was cut short, so it dropped like a stone and vanished for decades. Number 14, The Long Memory, 1953. Imagine spending 12 years locked away for a crime you did not commit. Then imagine being set free with nothing left in your heart but revenge. That is the burning core of this bleak and beautiful thriller. John Mills plays Philip Davidson, a man who was framed for a killing he had nothing to do with. 3 people lied about him in court and sent him to prison, and one of them was the woman he loved. Now, after 12 years, he walks out into a gray world, followed everywhere by the watchful eye of the police. He makes his home on a broken-down old barge, stranded in the mud of a lonely river shore, and he begins to hunt down the liars who ruined his life. But there is a cruel twist waiting for him. The woman who betrayed him is now married to the very police officer who is trying to keep an eye on him. As Davidson closes in on his revenge, an unexpected thing happens. A gentle, wounded refugee woman finds her way to his barge, and her quiet kindness slowly begins to melt the hate inside him. The film is filmed on the bleak, muddy flats of the river, all fog and rotting boats and empty skies, and that grim landscape becomes a character of its own. It was made by Robert Hamer, one of Britain's finest directors, and many people place it right beside the greatest British crime films ever made. The famous power of the film is not action but atmosphere, a heavy sadness that soaks into every frame like the rain. Americans missed it because John Mills was seen as a gentle, decent leading man at home, and few in America ever expected to see him playing a bitter, unshaven man burning for revenge. Number 13, Pool of London, 1951. This film broke a rule that nobody in Britain had dared to break before, and it did it inside a gripping crime story. On the surface, it is about 2 sailors on shore leave in the busy docks of London. One is a fast-talking wide boy named Dan, always looking for easy money. The other is his good friend Johnny, a quiet and decent man from the Caribbean, played by Earl Cameron in his very first big role. Dan has a nice little sideline smuggling goods off his ship, and he gets pulled into a much bigger job. A gang of thieves hires him to smuggle out a fortune in stolen diamonds. But the robbery turns deadly when a night watchman is killed, and suddenly Dan is wanted for far more than smuggling. To save himself, he even tries to use his trusting friend Johnny to carry the stolen goods, not thinking about how much worse it would be for a black man to be caught. And here is what made this film so daring. Alongside the crime, we watch Johnny meet a kind white woman named Pat, and the two slowly begin to fall for each other. This was the first British film ever to show a romance between a black man and a white woman, and it did not hide from the ugly racism they faced at every turn. The heist itself is thrilling, carried out by an acrobat who escapes across the high rooftops of the bombed-out city. It came from Ealing Studios and the great director Basil Dearden, who cared deeply about real problems in society. Americans never discovered it partly because the studio was known for gentle comedies, and few expected such a bold, forward-thinking crime film to be hiding under the same roof. Number 12. Cast a Dark Shadow, 1955. Some killers use guns. This one uses charm and a smile and a wedding ring. Dirk Bogarde gives one of his creepiest performances as Edward Bear, a handsome and cheerful young man who calls himself Teddy. Teddy has a very simple plan for getting rich. He marries older, wealthy women, and then he quietly does away with them. As the film opens, he is married to a kind older woman named Monica, and he has slowly turned her into a heavy drinker so that his plan will be easier. One night he arranges her death and makes it look like a sad accident with a gas fire. But then comes the twist that ruins everything. Teddy learns that Monica did not leave him her fortune after all. He gets only the house, while her money goes to a distant sister. So the cheerful killer must find another rich wife with a short future. This time he sets his sights on a tough, sharp widow named Frida, played by the wonderful Margaret Lockwood. And here is where the film gets its bite. Frida is nobody's fool. She has met smooth-talking cads before, and she watches Teddy like a hawk, matching his every move. Their scenes together crackle like two sharks circling each other, and for once the charming killer has met his match. Bogard plays the whole thing with a cold, boyish grin that makes your skin crawl, showing you the sick mind turning behind his handsome face. The film races to a wicked ending on a cliffside road, where Teddy's own greed and panic finally catch up with him. It was directed by Lewis Gilbert, who would later make famous James Bond films. Americans missed it because Bogard was still seen there as a light and charming star, and few knew he could be so quietly evil. Number 11, The Small Back Room, 1949. What is more frightening than a killer? Try a ticking bomb, and a hero who might crack before it goes off. This tense and unusual thriller comes from Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, two of the greatest filmmakers Britain ever produced. It is set during the Second World War, and it follows a brilliant but broken scientist named Sammy Rice. Sammy is one of the unsung men who work in the back rooms, testing weapons and solving deadly problems for the war effort, but he is a wreck. He walks with terrible pain on an artificial foot, he is buried in bitterness and self-pity, and every night he fights a losing battle against the bottle. His patient girlfriend Susan stands by him through it all, watching him slowly destroy himself. Then a mission arrives that only he can handle. The enemy is dropping a nasty new kind of booby-trapped bomb, disguised to look harmless, and children have already lost their lives to it. Sammy must find a way to take one apart before it kills again. The film has two unforgettable scenes. The first is a nightmare, when Sammy, desperate for a drink, is dwarfed by a giant whiskey bottle that towers 15 feet over him, while clocks tick all around, showing the war inside his own mind. The second is the ending, a long and almost unbearable stretch of pure suspense as Sammy kneels alone on a windswept stretch of pebbly beach, trying to defuse the deadly device with his own trembling hands. It runs for many minutes with barely a sound. Powell himself called it one of his finest films. Americans missed it because it was sold as a war picture at a time when audiences were tired of war, so it quietly failed and slipped out of sight for years. Number 10, Hell Drivers, 1957. You will not believe the cast list on this one. This rough, roaring thriller is packed with future stars, and it hits like a punch to the gut. Stanley Baker plays Tom Yateley, a quiet ex-convict trying to go straight. He takes a job driving heavy trucks loaded with gravel, but he soon learns the job is a nightmare. The bosses force the drivers to race these huge trucks at reckless speeds over narrow, twisting roads, all day long, because the more loads they haul, the more money the company makes. Fall behind and you are fired. It is dangerous and it is corrupt, and at the center of it all is a brutal foreman named Red, a snarling bully who rules the other men through fear and violence. As Tom digs deeper, he uncovers a dirty racket being run by Red and the manager, and he becomes a target. His only real friend is a gentle Italian driver named Gino. Now here's the part that makes film fans gasp. That vicious foreman Red is played by Patrick McGoohan, who would become a famous television star. Among the other truck drivers you will spot a young Sean Connery, years before he became James Bond, along with future stars like David McCallum, Gordon Jackson, and Sid James. Even the man who would become the very first Doctor Who is in it as a crooked boss. The action is real and thrilling, with those massive trucks screeching around corners and running family cars off the roads. It all leads to a savage showdown between Tom and Red. It was made by an American director who had been driven out of Hollywood, which gives it a hard, angry edge. Americans never saw it, because it was buried in Britain and barely released across the ocean. Number 9, Sapphire, 1959. A murder mystery can be more than a puzzle. It can hold up a mirror to a whole society, and few films did it as bravely as this one. It begins with a body. A beautiful young music student named Sapphire is found dead in a London park. Two detectives take the case, and at first it looks like a simple crime. Then they discover a shocking secret. The dead girl was of mixed race, but her skin was light, and she had been living her life as a white woman, hiding her true background from everyone, even from the young man she was going to marry. She was also going to have a baby. Suddenly, the case cracks open a wave of ugly hatred and prejudice all across the city. The detectives wade through a swamp of bigotry as they question the girl's white boyfriend, his angry family who feared she would ruin his future, and the men she had known. What makes the film so sharp is that one of the two detectives is openly prejudiced himself, and the wiser, older detective keeps correcting him. The trail leads through London's lively jazz clubs and its hidden black community, showing a rich and complex world that British films had almost never shown before. And the film is brave enough to show that this hatred is not found in only one type of person, but hides in the hearts of the rich and the poor, the young and the old, all across the city. The mystery is a real one, with a clever twist about who truly killed her. But the film's real target is the poison of racism itself. It came from director Basil Dearden and won the top prize for Best British Film. The final words of the detective are haunting. He admits they solved nothing. They only picked up the pieces. Americans missed it because it dealt so directly with race at a time when such honest films were rare and easy to overlook. Number 8, The Criminal, 1960. Most heist films are about the robbery. This one is about the man, and it is one of the most powerful crime pictures Britain ever made. Stanley Baker at his toughest plays Johnny Banyan, a hardened career criminal who is treated like a king inside prison. When he is set free, he wastes no time planning his greatest job, a huge robbery at a racetrack. The robbery goes off, and he escapes with £40,000. But he trusts the wrong people. He is betrayed by his own gang, and before long he is arrested and sent right back to prison. There is only one problem for everyone else. Johnny buried the stolen money in a lonely field, and he refuses to tell a single soul where it is. Now the whole criminal world wants that money, and they will do anything to make him talk. Inside prison, a powerful boss takes Johnny under his wing, and the two of them plot in whispers during Sunday church service. Outside, a smooth and dangerous man plans to squeeze the location out of him by any means. The film moves back and forth between the brutal world of the prison and the cold, treacherous world of crime on the outside, and it shows there is barely any difference between the two. To force Johnny to talk, the gang even seizes the woman he loves, and the pressure closes in on him from every side at once. The famous ending is unforgettable. Johnny lies wounded and dying in a snow-covered field, the only man alive who knows where the fortune is hidden, and he takes his secret with him. It was made by another brilliant American director forced out of Hollywood, and in America it was renamed The Concrete Jungle and quietly ignored. Baker's fierce performance and the film's stark power make it a treasure that far too few people across the ocean have ever found. Number 7. Obsession, 1949. How do you commit the perfect murder? A cold and clever doctor thinks he has the answer, and watching him work is a slow, chilling delight. Robert Newton plays Dr. Clive Reardon, a calm and proper London man whose wife keeps having affairs. When he catches her with her latest lover, a cheerful American, something inside him finally snaps. But Reardon is a patient man, and he does not act in a rage. Instead, he kidnaps the American at gunpoint and hides him away, chained up in a secret room inside a bombed-out ruin in the city. His plan is coldly brilliant. He will keep the man alive for months, until everyone stops looking for him and the disappearance is forgotten. Only then will he kill him, when no one could ever connect the two. And he has thought of everything, even how to make the body vanish completely. Each day he visits his prisoner and slowly fills a bathtub with acid, calmly explaining his terrible plan while the trapped man tries to talk his way to freedom. What Reardon does not count on is his own little dog, who keeps following him to the secret room and threatens to give the whole thing away. He also does not count on a sharp and cheerful detective from Scotland Yard, who slowly grows suspicious. The doctor finally trips himself up over one small clue, an American word he should not have known. The heart of the film is the strange, tense friendship that grows between the two men, the calm killer and his doomed prisoner, who speak to each other like polite gentlemen, even as one of them quietly plans the other's death. The film was made by an American director who had been banned from Hollywood, and here is the wildest part. When a real acid bath killer made headlines in Britain, the film's release was held back. In America, it was renamed The Hidden Room, and it slipped away almost unseen. Number 6. The Blue Lamp, 1950. This film gave Britain one of its most beloved characters, and then it did something shocking to him. It follows the daily life of a kind, steady London policeman named George Dixon, a friendly, old-fashioned officer who walks his beat, knows everyone by name, and is training a young rookie to follow in his footsteps. For half the film, we simply watch the police go about their honest work, and we grow to love the gentle Dixon. At the same time, we meet a very different kind of young man, a reckless and desperate criminal named Tom Riley, played by Dirk Bogarde in the role that made him a star. Riley is a nervous, cruel youth with a gun, and he plans to rob a cinema. Then comes the moment that shocked audiences to their core. When kind old Dixon confronts the young robber and gently tries to talk him into handing over the weapon, Riley panics and shoots him. The beloved policeman dies, and the whole film changes in an instant. Now it becomes a gripping manhunt, as the entire police force closes in on the cop killer. A little girl finds the discarded gun, clues are slowly gathered, and the chase leads to a thrilling finish at a crowded Greyhound racing stadium. There, the criminals and gamblers themselves turn against Riley and help the unarmed police corner him among the crowds. There is a wonderful piece of history here. Audiences loved the murdered Dixon so much that he was brought back to life for a television show that ran for over 20 years, with the same actor playing him into his 80s. It came from Ealing Studios and won the top British Film Prize. Americans never truly discovered it because its very British world of unarmed bobbies felt like something from another planet. Number 5. Yield to the Night, 1956. You already know she did it. The mystery is whether she will live or die, and that makes this one of the most powerful and daring films Britain ever made. It stars Diana Dors, who was famous as a glamorous blonde bombshell in the role of her life. She plays Mary Hilton, and the film opens with a stunning, wordless sequence. We watch her walk through the streets of London, and then, with a cold and steady hand, she shoots another woman dead. She is guilty, and there is no doubt about it. She killed the wealthy woman she blamed for driving the man she loved to end his own life. The rest of the film is something we rarely see. Mary sits in a prison cell, sentenced to hang, and we wait with her through her final days, hour by hour, to learn if she will be spared at the last moment. She is watched every second by prison guards, even while she sleeps, and the light in her cell can never be turned off. Slowly, a quiet bond forms between her and one of the kinder guards, one of the few tender threads in a cold and frightening place. Diana Dors throws away all her glamour for this role. Her bright, beautiful look is gone, replaced by a plain, frightened, aging woman worn down by fear. It is a stunning transformation, and it proved she was a real and serious actress. The film was made as a strong cry against the death penalty, and it dared to ask its hard question about a guilty woman rather than an innocent one. In America, it was given a cheap and silly new title, Blonde Sinner, that tried to sell the very glamour the film was throwing away. That, more than anything, buried this brave and heartbreaking picture across the ocean. Number 4. It Always Rains on Sunday, 1947. One rainy Sunday, one ordinary house, one secret hidden in the back garden. This film squeezes an entire world of tension into a single day, and it is a masterpiece. Googie Withers plays Rose, a tired housewife in the poor East End of London. She is trapped in a dull marriage to a kind but older man, and she spends her days cooking and cleaning and dreaming of the past. Then, on this gray and drizzly Sunday, everything changes. She reads in the newspaper that a criminal has broken out of prison, and that criminal is Tommy Swan, the exciting man she loved years before he was locked away. Moments later, she finds him hiding, cold and wet and desperate, in the old bomb shelter in her own back garden. Torn between her past and her present, Rose hides him in her bedroom while the normal life of the house goes on all around her, her family completely unaware that a wanted man is just behind the door. All day long, the walls close in, neighbors call, a nosy reporter comes knocking, and the police draw closer and closer. Around this tense center, the film weaves a rich tapestry of ordinary life in the crowded streets, the markets, and the little shops, making the whole neighborhood feel alive. It all builds to a heart-stopping final chase through a huge railway yard, a thrilling sequence in the fog and rain that many crime films would copy for years. And when it seems Rose has lost everything, she is pushed to a moment of terrible despair. It was made by director Robert Hamer, and it is now seen as one of the finest British films of its time. Americans missed it for decades, and when it finally screened in New York many years later, critics were stunned they had never known it existed. Number 3. Seance on a Wet Afternoon, 1964. Imagine kidnapping a child, not for money, but for fame. This strange and chilling thriller sinks slowly under your skin and refuses to leave. It stars an American actress named Kim Stanley in one of the few films she ever made, and her performance is terrifying. She plays Myra Savage, a woman who holds seances in her front room and truly believes she can speak to the dead. But her business is small, and Myra is desperate to be famous, to have the whole world believe in her powers. So she cooks up a wicked and clever plan. She will kidnap a child from a wealthy family, Then, once the police are baffled and the newspapers are full of the story, she will step forward and use her powers to lead everyone to the missing girl, becoming famous overnight as a great and gifted medium. To carry out this cold plan, she leans on her weak and gentle husband Billy, a sickly man who cannot say no to her, played beautifully by Richard Attenborough. Together they take the child and hide her away in their home. But nothing is as simple as Myra imagined. Her mind, we slowly learn, is coming apart, haunted by the ghost of her own baby son who died long ago. And Billy, who never wanted any of this, grows more and more frightened as the plan spirals out of control. The film is full of nerve-wracking moments, but the most chilling comes when the child's frightened mother visits Myra for a seance, while the missing girl sits hidden in the very next room. The tension is almost too much to bear. It moves slowly and quietly, like a bad dream, wrapped in a gloomy old house. Americans barely discovered it, even though Kim Stanley earned a top acting nomination, because it fell through the cracks and was too quiet and strange for the crowds. Number 2. They Made Me a Fugitive. 1947. This is the film that proved Britain could be tougher, meaner, and more brutal than anything Hollywood dared to make. It is a savage classic. Trevor Howard plays Clem Morgan, a former war pilot who came home to peace and found nothing but boredom and disappointment. With no work and too much time on his hands, he drifts into a life of crime, joining a black market gang that runs its dirty business out of a most sinister front. Their headquarters is a funeral parlor, where they hide stolen goods inside coffins. The gang is led by a truly frightening villain, a vain and vicious man whose nickname is short for Narcissus. Clem thinks he is just handling some minor smuggling, until he discovers the gang is dealing in far worse. He wants out, but the boss has decided to destroy him. During a robbery, Clem is knocked out and framed, and he is blamed for the death of a policeman he was actually trying to save. Sent to prison for a crime he did not commit, Clem does the only thing he can. He breaks out, and he comes back for revenge, helped by the woman the villain threw aside. The film pulls no punches. It is full of cruelty and betrayal, shot in deep, dark shadows that make the whole world feel poisoned. The famous ending is a brutal fight to the death on the rooftop of the funeral home, high above the ground, with a sign nearby that grimly reads that it is later than you think. It was made by a gifted director who came from far away, and it is now called one of the greatest British crime films of all. Americans never truly discovered it, because it was overshadowed by more famous films of the day and then slipped quietly into the dark. Number 1. Brighton Rock, 1948. And here it is, the crown jewel, one of the most shocking and heartless crime films ever made anywhere. It stars a young Richard Attenborough in the role that changed his career, playing a small-time gang leader with a baby face and a soul made of ice. His name is Pinky Brown, and he is a teenage criminal running a razor gang in the bright and cheerful seaside town of Brighton. But behind the sunshine and the fun of the fairground, Pinky is a cold and ruthless killer. The film opens with him hunting down a journalist named Fred, and he kills the man on a ghost train ride, while frightened tourists scream all around, never knowing what really happened in the dark. But there is a witness of sorts. A brassy, big-hearted woman named Ida picks up on the truth, and she begins to dig, determined to prove that Fred was murdered. To cover his tracks, Pinky befriends a sweet, innocent young waitress named Rose, who saw something she should not have. To keep her from ever testifying against him, he marries her, even though he feels nothing for her but disgust. And this leads to the most cruel and famous moment in all of British cinema. Rose asks Pinky to make a recording of his voice as a keepsake of his love. Alone in the booth, he speaks his true feelings, telling her he hates her. Poor Rose treasures the record, believing it holds his words of love. And in the film's heartbreaking final twist, a scratch on the record means she will only ever hear the words "I love you" over and over, never knowing the truth. It came from a great novel by Graham Greene. In America, it was given the throwaway title Young Scarface, and that is exactly why so few across the ocean ever discovered this dark and perfect masterpiece. So the next time someone tells you that America owned the dark side of cinema, show them this list. Britain was making crime films this bold and this brutal, while Hollywood was still playing it safe, and the world simply looked away. Every one of these 18 films is out there right now, waiting to be found. If you have seen any of them, tell me down in the comments which one hit the hardest. And if this opened your eyes, you already know what to do.